What's up, YouTube family? I'm back at the drawing table. Welcome to my channel, and for those who've been here before, welcome back. Today, I want to talk about becoming better at drawing without sucking all the fun out of it for yourself. And what I mean by this is, as artists, we come to a crossroad at some point where we have to make a decision. And that decision is, do we just continue on the same path that we're going, just kind of drawing as a hobby, drawing for pure enjoyment, or do we try to get better and better and become professional level at drawing, or someday mastery level of drawing, right? So that's our choice. We kind of have to decide which path we are going to take. Do we just operate in this, pure love of drawing stage where you will get better over time, but the progression is not as fast? You may never get to professional level. You might, but you may never get there because you're just kind of drawing for enjoyment and you're not really thinking about the improvements so much. Or do we go on the path of drawing for mastery, right? So those are decisions. Now, if we decide to go on that path of drawing for mastery, there's a major thing that could happen, and that's drawing could become not fun. It can start to feel like work, right? And that's the thing we do not want to happen, right? But in order to achieve this task of getting to that like mastery level, we're going to have to draw some things and learn how to do some things that we may not like doing. That's the rub, right? So how do we navigate this and still make it enjoyable for us, right? And I think the major key in this equation is balance, right? Because we have to learn how to balance the different things, right? Like we got the things that we enjoy to draw, then we got the things we don't like to draw that much, right? We got the things that we need to learn, but we don't want to go through that process of learning them, right? We just want to we want to just get the result, right? So how do we navigate this, right? So let's just kind of talk about how we can do this, right? So first off, one of the major things in starting this process is drawing the things you enjoy, right? So you want to first, that's where you start. And most of us, we already did that, right, when we was young, and we probably drew all through school when we didn't supposed to be drawing or whatever. So we kind of had that. Now the problem is if you start this later and you're getting back into drawing, you have to start there again, right? So if you went through school and you end up not working in art, so you kind of got away from drawing, you just got like a regular job doing something else, and you decide, you know what, I wish I would have pursued this as a career. So I want to go back into it. So now you have to restart that process because you got out of drawing. So you got to start back at square one and just start back drawing for pure enjoyment. Because if you decide to jump back into it and try to go to that mastery level, it's going to be very hard for you to do that because you haven't been drawing like you used to when you was younger, right? So that's the first step if you got away from drawing. The first step is just getting back to that level of just drawing for pure enjoyment. And once you got that, then you can move on to the next step. So the next step is taking the things you enjoy and mixing it with the things that you don't like, but you need to learn, right? Um, so that could be anything. Like if you don't know how to, you want to you like to draw the human figure, but you got stiff figures, so you may need to learn how to do gestural drawing, right? Or um, you may need to learn how to do perspective. You want to draw your figures interacting with each other, but they need to look like they're operating in a perspective. Whatever it may be, you need to figure out how can you mix and marry the two to where that it is still enjoyable, but it's also challenging and teaching you something new, right? So you have to balance these two things because if you stay in that pure enjoyment lane, your progress won't be happening as fast and you may never achieve that mastery level, right? But if you go all the way full force into, I'm gonna go academic drawing all the way, you might suck out all the fun for yourself and then you may be put off from drawing and you just might put the pencil down and never draw again or not draw for months at a time, right? Because you start to get into burnout because you took all the fun out of it. So you have to really figure out how can I get the enjoyment but also get the improvement, right? And that is balancing these two things and making it where it's challenging, but it's not so challenging that it's overwhelming, and it is not so easy that you're not getting much from it, right? So you have to really figure that out and operate in that space. And then you could also, it's going to be days where you want to have those days where you still just draw for pure enjoyment. You got to have those days in there where you like to draw comic book characters, so you just sit and draw comic book characters all day. You really not focusing on learning a specific thing on those days. You just doing what you know that you love, um, which is still a good thing because you're reinforcing those things that you already know, right? But then you got to have those days where, what, I am going to, purely focus on like gestural drawings and getting more flow and movement in my figures, right? So now you kind of operating in a space where you like to draw figures, but how can you make your figures have more action, right? And this is going to be more challenging for you because you've been drawing stiff poses, but now you're just adding this element, right? You just add whatever you want to mix the two, whatever it is that you need to learn and that's challenging for you. You mix it with the things that you're interested in, and you will have much better progress with it that way. Okay, I think the next thing on the list would be managing your expectations, right? Or I think about it like putting your expectations in perspective, right? So our expectations can run wild, right? You know, especially as artists, we're dreamers, and we can have these crazy, lofty expectations, right? But you really need to take those expectations and put them in perspective, and you want to put them in perspective with time, right? I've heard people say lower, lower your expectations. I don't think you should lower your expectations, but you really want to put them into perspective with time, right? So what I mean by this is, um, if you just kind of starting getting serious about drawing and you comparing yourself to your favorite artists out there that been doing it for like 20 plus years, it would be crazy for you to think that you can get on their level within a few weeks or a few months, right? That would be a outlandish expectation. Now, unless you some type of drawing savant, that's probably not going to happen, right? So you have to think about your expectations in time. So if you say, I want to get on the level of Jim Lee or David Fitch, right? Uh, you have to think about, okay, they've been drawing for this long. I've been doing it for this long. Uh, how much time they've put in versus how much time I've put in, and so how long would this process be, right? So you always want to kind of think long term, right? And also, while looking at your favorite artist could be a bar to reach for or something to strive for, you don't want to constantly compare yourself to them, right? Like it's okay to have some healthy comparison, but it can lead down a dark path. And I would do another video on that later where I kind of go more into depth about that. But so when you doing comparison, I think the best thing to do when you want to compare things is compare yourself to yourself. And what I mean by that is compare your current work to your older work, right? So then you can see the improvements, right? So you want to take what you're doing now and you can pull up some of your older stuff and you can look and see, oh, okay, this got better. I got more flow in my figures. My figures don't look all stiff like they looked 3 months ago, right? So you want to do that. And in doing this, you want to give yourself enough time to make those improvements. This is crucial. You have to give yourself enough time to make the improvements. You can't do this every day and every week, right? Because the improvements will be so minute that you won't even notice them, right? So you have to put some time in between you comparing yourself, your current self, to your past work, right? So you want to, I would say 3 months would be a good time frame. If you really have to do it sooner than that, at least give yourself a month, right? To where you can actually see the improvements. Because if you try to do this on a daily or weekly basis, you won't see any improvement, and it can really deflate, your motivation, right? So you really want to give yourself enough time to where you can notice those improvements. So whenever you're thinking about expectations in time. You want to think long term, think months, quarters, biannually, annually, decades, right? You want to think long term because I mean, did you do this eventually? Uh, Taking this path, you have stuff that you did, a year ago or a couple of years ago, and you thought you was good then, and then you pull out your old work versus your new work, and the improvements will probably be vast. Now, another thing you need to keep in mind that the improvements are going to come in different amounts, right? So when you get better, sometimes you get way better. Sometimes there'll be small changes, like small improvements, right? And sometimes they may not be noticeable. Sometimes the improvements might not uh, be in your drawing or your mark making itself. It might be in your vision, right? So when you get those vision improvements, um, those are those are a little harder to, like, when you're doing like just picture to picture comparison. Your hand might haven't caught up to your vision. So that's why I really stress giving yourself enough time to make more improvements so you can see it. So most of the time it will be noticeable. Now, the closer you get to getting better, the better you get, those improvements tend to get a little smaller, right? Because now you're getting more into the finer details. It's kind of like I guess weight loss, right? Like when people are go on a weight loss journey, like if they're really big, um, and they go on a weight loss journey, they lose a lot more in the beginning. Um, they lose a lot more in the beginning because they just have more to lose. But then when they get closer, they say that like the last 10, 15 pounds is the hardest to lose because you got so little at that point. And the same thing opposite with, like, say, lifting weights, right? Like you maybe start out like smaller, skinny, and you lift weights. Those first couple years of lifting weights, you can make the most gains if you're serious about it. But once you get to a certain point, then the gains become slower and slower, or smaller and smaller, right? So you really got to, realize that your improvements are going to come in different amounts. All right. So the next thing I would say, and this would be the last thing, you got to learn to enjoy the process over the outcomes, right? So what I mean by this is you have to learn to enjoy the process more than the outcomes, right? So when we start drawing, a lot of times we really focus on the outcome, right? Like we want to draw like this person, or we want to draw like this person, right? We want our art to look like this, right? But the real magic actually happens in the process, right? And um I wish I would have thought about it this way when I was younger, right? Because when I first started drawing, it was just all about the outcomes. I wanted to know if I could draw whatever. I just wanted to know if I could draw it. So if I had something like, I want to draw that, I will take it, just a pure kind of observational drawing style where I would kind of look at it and see if I can draw it, right? But I would draw it, and it'll be kind of a one-time thing, and then I would find something else that I felt like I wanted to draw, right? But if I would have understood what I understand now, I would take whatever I wanted to draw. I would draw it, then I would put that aside, then I would draw it again, and I would put that aside, and then I would draw it again, right? Because uh, I would be focused more on the process of achieving that outcome versus only focus on getting an outcome that I like, right? So I would be focusing on how could I am I able to replicate this outcome, right? If am I able to do this time and time and time again and get something close to the same outcome or a better outcome than I did in the past, right? So if you can replicate it, then you really know you have developed the skill. And also, focusing on the outcome actually give you poor results in the long run, right? So which doesn't seem right, right? You think if I focus on it, I should get a better result, right? I should get better outcomes, but really, the process is where everything happens. The process is where the magic happens. The process is where you develop the skills in order to get the better outcome. So really focusing on a process, you get a byproduct of better outcomes, right? So the process gives you the byproduct of better outcomes, right? So that would be the final theme for today's video. So I guess to recap, uh, you gotta get your enjoyment of drawing. You know, you have to figure out how can you mix the enjoyment with the learning, the process of learning, right? So you got to mix that enjoyment with the process of learning. So it's fun and challenging at the same time. Then you have to put your expectations in perspective. You have to manage your expectations, right? You don't want to set goals that are crazy, outlandish, that when you don't achieve them, you feel like a failure, right? You want to really put your expectations in perspective with time and compare yourself to yourself more often than comparing yourself to your favorite artist. And then you want to learn to love the process more than the outcomes. So if you love the process, if you can learn to love the process, then you will start to get the better outcomes. But that's all I have for you guys today. I will catch you on the next one. Peace.